We're focusing on our single story. We have created this platform just so you guys could share your single stories as well, because we want to hear y'all single stories. We do. And we know that single stories are hard. People all the time believe what they have been told without hearing the full story. I mean, someone could tell one side of a story, just one single story, without giving your perspective or without giving your side, and it feels like that's become part of your identity. And it hurts. It really does. It could cause trauma, depression, low self-esteem. It could also make you feel that your voice is silenced.
And with what you said about changing an identity, I just find it super ironic how DPS was trying to make us out to seem malicious or selfish. Whole time, they were using DPS dollars when they could have been addressing the education gap. They were using money to harass former DPS students. And I feel like that just shows a lot about their character.
I'm DAHNI.
I'm KALIAH.
I'm JENELLE. And we are
No Justice, No Peace.
An Unrestricted Revolution. So, in our last episode, we wrapped up our first season, Dangers of a Single Story, with an interview featuring Dr. Dedrick Sims, the CEO and founder of Sims Fayola. In that episode, if you didn't get a chance to watch that episode, you should definitely go tune in because it was absolutely amazing. And we focused on the target and the stereotypes / single stories that are placed on Black men and Black young men. So we also talked about the resources and the opportunities that are available to help them get through, the traumas and things that they're facing in their everyday lives through the Sims Fayola Foundation.
And honestly, since that last podcast recording, we've been doing a lot, but one of the biggest things is that we were able to host a town hall at Evidentis. If y'all aren't in the area, Evidentis, it's by our school district. And we were able to host that last Sunday, and we really did it to kick off National Youth Violence Prevention Week. And we were able to have a panel that focused on the faces of trauma within the far Northeast. And, we were able to also have a student panel of, just different people we know in the community, and it was just phenomenal. They came with so much good energy, so many ideas, and it was just amazing. And to be honest, the town hall is really just the beginning of a conversation that really has been long overdue.
Facts.
And it's really about the rise of violence in our community.
And in order to be solutionists like the youth on our panel, we have to be involved with youth. Because youth voice is important, and we definitely saw that when youth were speaking up at that event, people listened. And their youth are very aware of the violence that is going on within their communities and what is happening right now in the world. So it is extremely important that we work with youth and prioritize youth voice in order to find out different solutions in order to help everyone in our community.
Y'all could tell this upcoming season is just going to be focused on youth.
Crazy.
How many times we said youth in like the first 2 minutes of the episode.
It's everything. And before we go any further, I want to ask, we stop for a minute and read our trigger alert. Donnie, can you please read it?
If you are not 110% in support of Black Minds Matter, please dismiss yourself. If you are in any sort of agreement with the systematic oppressions this country has inflicted on minorities, once again, please dismiss yourself. And if you are in any sort of disagreement with the if you're in any
agreement.
Yeah, if you're in any sort of agreement with wow.
If you're not willing to give every bit of the power that the people so undeniably deserve,
then please dismiss yourself. Yeah, you're gonna have to finish that for me.
Janelle's the expert. No one can do it like her.
So the people that, undeniably deserve the power, please give it to them. Because in a few moments, you're about to witness vast amounts of Black engagement. And if you do not dismiss yourself, then the thoughts, facts, and feelings we are about to share will most definitely dismiss you.
Period. And as we have this discussion, y'all are not off the hook from doing some work too. Because, no piece to take on restrictive revolution. We want your take. So if you have any questions, any comments, while you're listening, we have a chat box on all of our social medias that you can leave questions and comments, and towards the end of the show, we'll address them.
We definitely want to hear from you guys, so utilize the boxes.
The
boxes for chatting. Okay, guys, so before we start today's discussion, we must acknowledge the fact that often goes overlooked. Not all people think the same.
Everyone's idea of, especially youth violence, differs from person to person because of what's happening, because of our different experiences. And, not everybody's going to think about it the same.
Right. Some of us grew up in underfunded communities, meaning that they had no role models growing up, no resources, and sometimes really nothing at all. And then there are some people who have the privilege to be raised by adults in the suburbs with adult figures, have food on their tables, and even clothes on their backs.
And due to this, we all have had very different encounters with different people throughout our lives.
And this all comes with a different perspective based on where we grew up and what we grew up with. And we don't expect all people to believe what we believe, and neither should you.
Right, because everyone is entitled to their own beliefs, and we aren't under any obligation to all think the same, which really makes us unique and beautiful.
Honestly, and I feel like just bridging off of that at the panel, we were able to hear from an amazing group of students that all had different backgrounds, all had different experiences, and even though they had different, opinions of how they were coming into the conversation, it was really just a beautiful environment. And I just want to ask you guys, what was something that you learned from the panel?
There was one specific thing that some of the students were saying that really spoke out to me. They were talking about how there is so much access to the guns and where they could get them from. And they mentioned how all over social media, they have adults in their communities who are trying to sell these weapons to kids to make a profit. And so really they could get them anywhere as long as they contact them. So it's at the palm of their hand, which was really sad.
And that definitely hit me too, because it's not only did they mention having easy access, but they mentioned that the access was coming from the people that they're looking up to, and the people that are supposed to be steering them in the right directions and really prioritizing their lives, their safety, their minds. So that was one thing. But another thing is when I think it was Grayson that asked, but she said, has anybody or who all on this panel has felt like they've been in, a phase of depression throughout the past couple years or since COVID started. And every single student on the panel raised their hand. And I just was thinking, there was, 10 or 13 students on the panel?
Yeah,
so if you look at that like a representation of our communities and our youth in our communities, and every single person raised their hand, that means that nearly every single person, at least 95% of the students outside of that panel and outside of that building also felt depressed.
Exactly. And I feel like those two are great examples of what really made me feel something during the panel. But I also feel like on top of that, it was really good to see like the reasons why people were there, because I know there were multiple students who had friends who had passed away or had been affected by youth violence. And a lot of people, especially like when we first started out, they think that the youth don't care about these type of topics, or they feel like they're not interested. But just seeing how many students showed up to represent themselves and their friends really meant a lot to me. And also, like, when we were asking questions, we asked a good few, and like I think we only had like 2 hours to talk, but every time we asked a question, we just went down the line. Everybody wanted to answer. And it was just so good being in that environment where everybody had an idea, everybody wanted to talk, and it was really a really productive experience.
Yeah, and that's why it's important that we continue having these conversations and including youth at the table when we have these conversations, because this topic can be extremely difficult for us, and it seems like the access to guns makes people more likely to shoot them or be able to solve issues in these ways. So it's important that we have youth in these conversations to prevent it.
Or think that they're solving issues in these ways when it's really just like, oftentimes it's like a domino effect, and people have this mindset of get back. So like, you shoot mine, I'm gonna go shoot yours, and then it's like our whole community is dead. And what's the solution? Like, where are we getting with this?
It's way too common.
And like, everybody knows in our community, almost everybody is in some way, shape, or form related. Like, your cousin is their cousin, their cousin's your cousin. Like, it's crazy. So
it is. And I honestly, like, while it's depressing and disappointing how common shootings are, especially when it comes to youth violence, because I know, like, here in the far northeast, we've lost over 100 young people in the last few years. By young people, we mean from ages 0 to 24. So, like, just think about that age group. We've lost over 100 of them to youth violence in the last few years, and that includes gun violence, gang violence, domestic abuse, and suicide. And, these are all the faces of trauma. These people, they've experienced things in their life, and the experience of, not only dying, but the people in your community facing that is traumatic. And, as you can see on this visual here, we don't have the names of every single person that passed away in our community. So if you're watching this and you're thinking of somebody that you don't see, please drop them in the chat box, because we just want to have everyone represented as best as possible.
And as we move forward, we cannot and will not forget these people, their faces, their lives, their greatness. And oh my gosh, looking at the screen, I just want to cry, because I know. But we're going to continue to honor their memory, their lives, and their loved ones as we find a solution so that we don't have to add any more names to this list.
And that's why this season we are going to be focusing on having youth voice heal our community trauma, have conversations to heal this community and talk about this trauma. And with that being said, what are you guys looking forward to this season?
That's a good question. Honestly, I'm looking forward to because I know in the past, I think we mentioned it a few times, we were really restricted in what we could talk about on our platform due to fears of different things. But I feel like with this platform that we have, especially talking with different youth, I'm just really looking forward to getting into the nitty-gritty of how these issues exist, because, even if we think we're educated, we think we know different things, there's always something we don't know.
Thanks.
And I think I just appreciate all the different perspectives we not only saw in the panel, but that our audience gets to see going forward of what youth violence is really like with people with different perspectives.
And I'm really excited to just be able to talk about not only like people and what social media portrays them as, or their tragic stories, of how they passed or were murdered and, all that negative stuff, but also more of the positive light of these people's loved ones being able to come on here and share their actual greatness, share their lives, share the things that they live for, the things that they love to do, just them in like their entirety, because like our last season was the single stories. We have to continue to make sure that there are no single stories of these people that, have unfortunately passed away. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. And then, like you said, seeing the different perspectives of, our youth, and really just feeling like the hope moving forward for our community, and, feeling like we're actually making a change, making a difference, and just helping other youth see that their voice does make an impact, and, the things that they do and the actions that they carry on throughout our community really will make a change for us in our futures.
What about you, Donnie?
Yeah.
I think I'm really excited to have more youth voice in this season. I know especially like you said, we have had a lot of violence going on within our communities, and we see our loved ones, our friends, or friend of a friend being witnessing these deaths of these children, and it's just really sad to see. So I think just having youth on our little platform, on our season, will just be able to really bring light to the situations that are going on within our community.
I definitely agree.
And I know I mentioned how gang violence is also a contributor to this issue as well. And I know, at least 2 seasons ago, which in real time is like 2 years ago, we had a podcast talking about, how gangs originate in the U.S. and how they originally came from communities of Black people, specifically in LA, but really all over the country, wanting to protect themselves and, kind of have a way of community to protect themselves from violence, especially from white people. And I know while we kind of have an idea of what the gang culture looks like today, especially in our community, I just want to ask you guys, how do you think mental health and trauma can play into the violence in our community?
I think mental health and trauma is exactly why this violence in our community is happening. I know when we had that conversation, we talked a lot about how trauma is really like post-traumatic disorder and how that is being portrayed onto our generation today and what that looks like for our generation today. And so you could kind of see how like depression and these mental health, like all the students raise their hands when the question about depression happened. So it really shows that if they're not happy, what are other ways that they could like reach out there? Who can they reach out to? And if they don't feel like they have a community that is supportive and someone that can help with their mental health, there's of course violence, which only plays into that gang culture.
And just like going off of what you said, I feel like a lot of this violence is kind of like I will say it's absurd, but it's a way for students to shout out the fact that they need help, like they need this attention. They feel like, it's kind of like with a little kid. If they don't get their way and they throw temper tantrums and destroy stuff, they feel like that's a better way to express their feelings and express themselves. And I just feel like with having so much trauma and, just the everyday pressures of life and society with us being Black people, if we don't have outlets to express our feelings and, the things that are going on with us, then they do it in absurd ways. So
I definitely agree. I also feel like, I know we talked about it a little bit on the panel too, where like, if the further back generations, if they didn't learn certain ways to cope with, obviously their trauma going all the way back to slavery, the way that we as a Black people, and to be honest, in any culture where there's traumas from the past that aren't necessarily dealt with, I feel like in the Black community, we need to do a lot of work to not only learn that getting help for mental health is okay, because that's also just a big thing where people may have anger issues, they may have depression, they may have certain conditions where violence just seems normal to them, and it can't just be something that like they learn, but something they're born with. And I feel like as a community, we need to really make it more normal to get help without having to act a certain way before. Especially all the time on the news, we see like, oh, this person committed this crime because they felt like they had no other option, or this person committed this crime. Well, actually, that's not even really told all the time, but like that can be the background where people do things because they haven't learned how to solve problems in other ways.
Right.
And I feel like that's just a big thing too with mental health. Just working on that alone, with therapy, with anything, it really helps you work those problem solving skills where you're able to solve your issues before you result to violence.
Facts. And another thing that I wanted to mention that we haven't really talked about is like the influence of social media on our generations and how that's playing into the violence. Like, I know for me personally, I cannot have social media on my phone and be like too attached to it, because I do notice, like, as a really empathetic person, I feel a lot of the energy that like I see on my timeline and that I see going through. So it really can, put our youth in just like a hole of depression to where they're feeling like they are not able to get out of that. And then also another thing I wanted to bring up is what the students said about feeling like they have something to prove, and social media carrying like a certain culture, onto our mindsets on how we should be acting, how we should be expressing ourselves, like what's normal behavior for us nowadays, what's quote unquote cool, or, like how we need to react to certain things that, affect us. And I just think that seeing like having our next, well, this season be youth led, we're gonna see a lot about how social media influence can play into that, and then how it kind of plays into the system that's set up for us to, you know, be failing. And like Mark Zuckerberg is up there, they literally see everything. You could post something and they'll flag a post or be like, this is not supposed to go up there, but like there's so much stuff that is on there. For example, people posting like quote unquote metal on the market, who's trying to get this, and access to all this negativity that's literally being fed into our communities and it's not being filtered out. So I definitely feel like social media has a huge part to play with the violence that we're experiencing.
Actually, I totally agree, and I want to take it a step further too, because I think I probably ranted about before, but where it's like our generation, especially with like, you know, I think social media can do good and bad, especially with like it just depends what you're exposed to. Right. I also feel like, oh my God, how am I gonna word it? It's like our generation really has a lack of hope, because, you know, there's, especially with social media, even though you can be exposed to so many good things, it's so hard to stay positive when like you see this shooting happened, this person that you know passed away, all this stuff is happening overseas, like you're being exposed to it on your TikTok feed while you're just trying to like be happy.
Exactly, like in your free time.
It's like you're because in the past people had the privilege of being able to ignore certain issues, and like our generation really doesn't have that luxury. So I can kind of see how that plays into it, where it's like, you know, every time I go on social media, I see something's going wrong. I'm seeing something about how like the planet's gonna explode in 100 years. It's like there's really less and less to look forward to, and it's like not that it's excusable, but it's kind of understandable why some students resort to violence, because it's like I have nothing else to look forward to.
Right.
And I feel like addressing that lack of hope in our generation can really help address why there's so much violence, so many negative things that we're perpetuating. You know.
Thanks. And with what you just said, like, it reminds me about what a student said on the panel, where we were thinking of, like, you know, why this violence is happening in our community. And a student said, well, like, we don't see ourselves in the future. So it's like, if you don't see yourself in the future, you're not putting your positivity out there, manifesting your dreams, and, you know, thinking about what everyday action you need to put in to get to your dreams. And not only that, but what you need to be avoiding, who you need to be avoiding to get to your goals and your dreams, to be who you want to be in the future. Then like you said, it leads to that lack of hope and probably a lot of this violence.
I think it's like really hard too, because social media plays a big role in really everyone's lives. Like I even see my stepmother, for example, always when my little brother is bored or when he doesn't have anything to do, she hands him her phone or his iPad, and then he just has everything at his fingertips. He has the internet. He's allowed to search any things up. And when he sees all this violence going on or these violent YouTube videos, he's like, I want to do that. That looks cool.
They're so impressionable.
Right. And it has a big influence on really our mental health and really what's going on in the world today. So I think a lot has to be done in order to combat that social media issue. But it's really hard.
And part of the things that, like, when the youth mention, and I feel like people really need to be intentional about, is putting positive role models and positive things out here to substitute. Like, for example, what you said about your little brother, that's exactly, it really rang a bell with my little brother, because he would watch like Power Rangers and like all these superhero movies and stuff like that, but a lot of it did revolve around violence. Like, he was a pretty, like, intense kid. He would punch a lot of stuff, and it's, like, it's funny, but at the same time, when he would get angry, I would see, like, those are the type of things that he would resort to, like, getting angry, feeling like he, you know, is bottling up all this energy and wants to punch, and just, like, at such a young age, at 4 years old, these are the things that he was doing. So I feel like having more positive things in place, and especially the intentionality being in school systems and, you know, where we spend majority of our lives, having that like teachers and people just being intentional about showing us more positive outlets and positive role models and other ways to let, like, those emotions and express ourselves.
I think also, like, with that, there's so much work to be done, because even when you said finding different outlets or different other things to do, when they're not looking at social media or when they're not looking at anything that's portrayed on the media, then they go into schools. And then also on the panel, students were saying that they don't feel safe in their school, that kids could bring in weapons to school and they don't feel safe. So it's like, where really can youth go? What can youth do in order to feel safe?
And then it gets worse because people have that I'd rather shoot than be shot at mindset. So if they feel like they're not safe and like, oh, this girl that don't like me, her brother or whoever she rocks with could have a weapon and be trying to use it against me, let me bring my weapon too. And at any moment, like, it just takes 1 second for somebody to misread energy or misread a situation, and that could be another life lost and another name that we have to say, another face that we have to acknowledge, another person that's on the list of the
Faces of trauma.
Literally.
Yeah. And like, I think I really like, 'cause I think I talked about this before too, where it's like, I don't want to rant about capitalism, but it has such a big deal, especially with like how we said with the school system, where like, number one, kids aren't going because they don't feel safe, or because, you know, number one, the main thing, they don't feel engaged. So I know, especially in our scenario, like, we're all obviously intelligent people, but, you know, the school system at the time before we started the podcast, it really wasn't engaging us. And it was like, you know, it takes one smart kid who knows what they're doing but isn't engaged in school, or doesn't feel like they have anything going on in school, to go and do something else. And a lot of these kids out here, like, especially like when people get opinions and like stereotypes about kids who are involved in this, they just see them as kids without potential. But honestly, I feel like all kids have potential, especially no matter what you get involved in. And it just makes me sad to think about how many students who are involved in violence, where if they were engaged sooner, or if they were given something to have them look forward to in life, and to think, I don't need to be doing this, I have something going forward, it could have stopped so much violence and so much unnecessary conflict. And I feel like it's just a duty of the school system to just change for once. Because the school system hasn't changed in so long. And I feel like if there was just some type of change where it allowed students to feel motivated and to feel like they don't have to, you know, really just engage them, because I know so many people are so bored in school, us included, and like they're so bored in school because it's just the same thing over and over and over again. And if you give students something to look forward to, it could deter so much of what's happening in the community. Because if you're not engaged in school, if you're not engaged at home, you're going to be engaged in the streets. Not the snap.
Engaged
That was a quote.
Streets,
Whoa.
right? Like, put that on
Bar
the shirt.
flowing.
Oh my God. Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And
The sirens outside. Sorry. I
It's
don't know.
like
I don't
what-
even know if y'all can hear that.
but what you were saying about them not being engaged in feeling like the stuff that, well, us doing the same things in school and in these school systems, and that's a big thing, because it's like that's so many people's mindset now is, I'm not using this. I'm not going to be wondering what pi times squared is and what x equals. Like, I've heard so many people say something like that. And it's like school should be changing to be more realistic to life and like things we're really going to use in life and skills that we actually want to build on. And, you know, maybe that would help people find other avenues other than what's just put out for us, the stereotypes of like, which it's, if you want to be a rapper, that's amazing.
That's
like
fine.
If that's really your dream, your goal, please keep grinding towards that, because it's definitely possible. But just being a rapper or feeling like their only outlet to making money is selling drugs or selling, or just being in sports, because everybody is not gonna like be successful in those avenues, and some of those avenues could really be the reason why you or a loved one close to you is losing their life. So just having things in schools that really feed into who and what we want to be as people and what we can really contribute to society, making us feel like we have a purpose here, you know, is a huge thing. So
Yep. Shoot, what else is there to say, really? I mean, we're going to get further in depth, but I feel like what we just talked about is so important, because I feel like, you know, especially if it's just the three of us coming up with those things, I can't
Right.
wait to hear what other people have to say, because, you
Right.
know, we've been talking to each other for the past 3 years. And, you know, we have good ideas, but we want to see y'all's ideas too.
And are you?
As we come to this close, we really want to emphasize how amazing, which I think we really already did, how amazing it was to hear from our peers and, you know, just hear we really piggybacked off of a lot of the things that they talked about. So being able to continue with that type of energy and this being like our first youth-led season is super, like,
it means a lot.
Right. And I'm definitely looking forward to it. But yeah, we want you guys to come on the podcast, talk about your ideas, talk about your experiences, and, you know, possible solutions to the violence. So yes.
Reach out.
And outside of that, everybody should know or acknowledge at least the fact that our future really does lie in the hands of the youth. And we are the people that we should depend on to make a change and, you know, make it better for our future generations. Because I know we're all tired of experiencing the things that we've been experiencing and having the feelings that we've literally been stuck with and probably just weighed down by. And, you know, we really can make an impact. So we want to hear you guys' voices, your stories, your traumas, because, like I said, your voice can and will make an impact for our community.
And if you're interested in getting on an episode, especially our youth, you can visit us at bit.ly/KJKP2.
And it has to be capitalized.
Yep, KJKP has to be capitalized. And please just sign up, feel comfortable, come talk to us. And we would love to hear all of you guys sharing your stories and just working to start building and healing the shared trauma within our communities.
And last but not least, don't forget to follow us on our social media, No Justice, No Peace, Unrestricted Revolution, and just show us some love, like, comment, and just interact. And make sure to subscribe to see more of No Justice, No Peace on our network. Bye!
It's been said that power waits for the one who earns it, the one who turns the situation around when their inner voice is sound. How will you earn your power? With words, or with silence and in life, or in death and violence? Then how will you use it? Will you confuse it and think anger is the only way to belong? Or will you abuse it and let pain make you forget right from wrong? Will that make you feel strong? Do you have the power to turn the situation around at the sound of your inner voice? You can pick up the sticks or you can grab the stick. How will you handle that choice? How do you want your story to end? Are these really your friends? Will this be fun? And do they have a gun? Will you be forced to use your power for what's right or to run? Will you look back on the time and wish you could rewind that last second, minute, hour? Make the choice to listen to your inner voice. How will you earn your power?